Dr. Elena Vasquez stood alone at the center of the enormous chamber, refusing to let the slightest hint of nervousness reach her face. Inside, however, her heart was beating faster with every passing second. The hall was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Vast enough to swallow entire cities, its towering walls disappeared into a ceiling lost in darkness, while hundreds of floating lights drifted silently overhead like miniature stars, bathing the chamber in soft silver and blue. Every step she took echoed through the immense space. Every sound seemed impossibly small. Around the circular chamber sat the representatives of dozens of civilizations, watching the lone human with quiet curiosity. Some possessed clusters of glowing eyes that never blinked. Others rested on forests of tentacles that shifted restlessly across their platforms. A few resembled ancient trees brought to life, their bark-like skin etched with faces older than human civilization itself. Each had crossed the stars to witness a historic moment. This was Harmony's Edge, the oldest diplomatic station in the known galaxy, the place where every new civilization took its first step onto the interstellar stage. Today, that civilization was humanity. Elena wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a politician. She was a scientist. Yet the responsibility resting on her shoulders was greater than any experiment she had ever conducted. With a single speech, she could earn humanity a place among the stars, or convince the galaxy that Earth should never have left its homeworld at all. She was the first human these aliens had ever seen. The journey to get here had taken 3 years. When humans first discovered, they were not alone in the universe. Everything changed. Radio signals from space led to contact with a peaceful alien race called the Cathani. They were the ones who told humans about the Galactic Council and arranged this meeting. Elena had spent months learning about alien customs and languages. She knew that this meeting would decide if humans could join the galactic community or if they would be left alone in their small corner of space. The pressure was enormous, but she tried to stay calm. "Dr. Vasquez," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Elena looked up and saw the council speaker, a tall blue being with 4 arms and silver eyes. "We welcome you to Harmony's Edge. Today we will conduct the standard evaluation to determine if your species is compatible with galactic civilization." Elena nodded. She had been told about this evaluation. Every new species had to go through it. The aliens needed to make sure that humans could get along with other races and would not cause problems. "The evaluation will be performed by our most skilled telepath," the speaker continued. "Zix Thora of the Velnathi will examine your mental patterns to assess your species' psychological compatibility." From the shadows at the side of the chamber, a figure approached. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The alien was unlike anything she had seen before. Zix was tall and thin, almost like a stretched-out human. Its skin was pale white and seemed to glow softly. It had no hair, and its head was larger than a human's. But the most striking feature was its eyes. They were completely black, like looking into deep space. The Velnathi were famous throughout the galaxy. Elena had read about them during her preparation. They were the strongest telepaths anyone had ever encountered. They could read minds from across a room and could even share thoughts with multiple beings at once. For thousands of years, they had served as the Council's mental evaluators. Their touch could reveal the deepest thoughts and feelings of any creature. "Do not be afraid," Zixra spoke, but its mouth did not move. The words appeared directly in Elena's mind. The voice was neither male nor female, but something in between. "This process has been performed on over 10,000 species. It is completely safe." Elena tried to relax. Around the chamber, other aliens watched with interest. Some were taking notes on strange devices. Others seemed to be communicating with each other through flashing lights or color changes in their skin. Everyone appeared calm and confident, as if this was just another routine day. Zix Thera moved closer. Up close, Elena could see that the alien's skin had tiny patterns on it, like scales or feathers, but so small they were almost invisible. The black eyes seemed to look right through her. "I will need to make physical contact," Zixathera explained in her mind. A simple touch on your forehead will allow me to examine your mental structure. The process takes only a few seconds." Elena nodded. She had been prepared for this. The council had explained that physical contact was necessary for the telepathic evaluation. She had practiced staying calm and keeping her thoughts organized. She had been told to think about peaceful things like Earth's oceans or quiet forests. The chamber fell silent. Even the floating light seemed to dim slightly. Elena could feel the attention of every alien in the room, focused on her and Zixt. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future. Zixtra raised one long, thin hand. Its fingers were longer than human fingers and ended in what looked like silver tips. The alien moved slowly and carefully, as if performing a sacred ritual. "Think of something that brings you peace," Zixtra's voice whispered in Elena's mind. "Allow your thoughts to flow naturally. Do not resist the connection." Elena thought about her childhood home in Mexico. She remembered sitting in her grandmother's garden, listening to stories about brave heroes and magical adventures. She thought about the smell of flowers and the sound of birds singing in the trees. Zixt's fingertips touched Elena's forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Elena felt a slight tingling sensation, like a gentle electric current. She kept thinking about peaceful memories just as she had been taught. Then everything went wrong. Zixthera's black eyes suddenly went wide. The alien's mouth opened, and a sound came out that Elena had never heard before. It was not quite a scream and not quite a roar, but something that seemed to come from the deepest part of terror and confusion. The sound was not just heard, it was felt. Every alien in the chamber reacted as if they had been struck by lightning. Several Veil Nathi who were sitting in the audience grabbed their heads and fell from their seats. Other telepathic species began making distressed noises. Some aliens started flashing bright colors while others began shaking uncontrollably. Zixthra stumbled backward, its hand still outstretched toward Elena. The alien's glowing skin began to flicker like a broken light. Its legs gave out, and it collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Elena stood frozen in shock. She had no idea what was happening. One moment she had been thinking about her grandmother's garden, and the next moment, the most powerful telepath in the galaxy was writhing on the floor in apparent agony. "Medical team to the chamber immediately," the council speaker shouted. The blue alien's forearms were moving frantically as it called for help. Strange floating machines rushed into the chamber. They surrounded Zixithara and began scanning the fallen telepath with beams of colored light. Elena could hear urgent voices speaking in languages she did not understand. Security guards approached Elena, but they seemed confused about what to do. She had not moved or done anything aggressive. She had simply stood there while the alien touched her forehead. "What happened?" Elena asked, but no one answered her. The chamber was filled with chaos as medical teams worked on Zixthera and other affected telepaths. Dr. Keithvar, an alien scientist Elena had met earlier, approached her carefully. He looked like a large furry bear with 6 legs and kind eyes. "Dr. Vasquez," he said in accented but clear English, "I need you to remain calm. Something unexpected has occurred during the evaluation. We need to understand what happened before we can proceed." Elena looked down at Zixthra, who was still unconscious and surrounded by medical equipment. "Is it going to be okay? I don't understand what went wrong." "Neither do we," Dr. Kether admitted. "In 10,000 evaluations, nothing like this has ever happened. The Veil Nathi are the strongest telepaths in known space. They have touched the minds of creatures from gas giants and beings made of pure energy. But your mind," he paused, looking troubled. "Your mind did something to Zixatha that we have never seen before." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She was supposed to represent the best of humanity, to show that her species deserved a place among the stars. Instead, her first act had been to somehow hurt the Council's most important telepath. As medical teams carried Zixatha from the chamber, Elena wondered if humanity's dream of joining the galactic community was already over. 3 days passed before Zixther woke up. Elena spent those days in a small room on Harmony's edge, waiting and worrying. Dr. Kethvar visited her regularly, bringing food and updates, but he always looked more confused than before. "The medical scans show no physical damage," Ronnie told Elena on the second day, Zixathera's body is perfectly healthy, but the mind, something happened to the mind that we do not understand. Elena paced around her small room. The walls showed images of peaceful landscapes from different worlds, probably meant to keep her calm, but nothing could calm the worry she felt. She had come here to help humanity join the galaxy, and instead she had hurt someone. On the third day, Dr. Cathar arrived with news. "Zixt is awake," he said. "But there is a problem. The telepath is having difficulty communicating. Every time Zixter tries to explain what happened, the words come out wrong. We need to understand what occurred during the mind touch." Elena followed Dr. Cathar through the corridors of the station. They passed many aliens, and Elena noticed that most of them stared at her with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Word had spread about what happened in the evaluation chamber. The medical bay was filled with machines that hummed and beeped softly. Zixatha lay on a bed that adjusted itself to the alien's body shape. The Veil Nathi looked smaller and more fragile than before. Its glowing skin was dim, and its black eyes seemed to have trouble focusing. Several other Veil Nathi stood around the bed. They were all connected to each other through thin silver wires that attached to their temples. Elena had learned that this was how they shared thoughts when one of them was injured. Dr. Vasquez, one of the other Veil Nathi, spoke aloud. "I am Kixandre Zicthar's colleague. We have been trying to understand what happened to our friend. May we ask you some questions?" Elena nodded. "Of course. I want to help however I can." Kixandre moved closer, but Elena noticed that the alien was careful not to touch her. "When Zixthor made contact with your mind, what were you thinking about?" "My grandmother's garden," Elena said. "I was remembering sitting there as a child, listening to her tell stories. It was peaceful and happy." The Veil Nati looked at each other with confusion. One of them spoke in their own language, making sounds like musical chimes. Kixandre translated. "My colleague asks if you were thinking of only one story, or many stories." Elena thought about it. "Well, my grandmother told me lots of stories over the years. Fairy tales, myths, adventures. I guess I was remembering all of them at once." This caused more excited chiming among the Veil Enthi. Kixandre's skin began to glow brighter. "How many stories would you say you remember?" Kixandre asked. Elena shrugged. "I don't know. Hundreds, maybe thousands. My grandmother loved to tell stories. And then there are all the books I've read, movies I've watched, TV shows." She trailed off, seeing the shocked expressions on the aliens' faces. Dr. Cathar stepped forward. "Elena, this might be important. Can you explain what you mean by all these stories being in your mind at once?" Elena tried to find the right words. "Well, when I think about my grandmother's garden, I don't just remember sitting there. I remember all the characters from her stories, too. Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, brave knights, wise wizards. They're all still in my head, like they're real people I once met." The room fell silent, except for the humming of medical machines. "When you say they are real people," Cassandra said slowly, "do you mean you can imagine what they would say or do in different situations?" "Of course," Elena said. "Can't everyone? Like right now, I can imagine what Sherlock Holmes would think about this situation. He'd probably say that the extraordinary nature of the event means we need to look for an extraordinary explanation." As Elena spoke, Zixatha suddenly sat up in bed. The injured telepath's eyes were wide with what looked like fear. "So many voices," Zixatha whispered, speaking aloud for the first time since the incident. "All talking at once, all real, all alive." Kixandre quickly moved to Zixt's side. "What do you mean, friend? What voices?" Zixt pointed at Elena with a shaking hand. In her mind, not one consciousness, thousands, millions. Every story she has ever heard lives there as real as any person. When I touched her thoughts, I touched them all. Dr. Cathar made notes on a small device. "Zixt, can you describe what you experienced more clearly?" The injured telepath closed its eyes and spoke slowly. "Imagine opening a door to what you think is a single room, but instead you find yourself in a vast city filled with people. Each person has their own life, their own thoughts, their own reality, but they all exist inside one mind." Elena felt a chill. "Are you saying that when you read my thoughts, you met the characters from stories?" "Not met," Zixatha said. "Became. For a moment, I was Little Red Riding Hood walking through the forest. Then I was the wolf hiding behind trees. Then I was Cinderella at the ball. Then I was the dragon that knights fight, all at the same time. Thousands of different lives, all equally real, all existing together. Dr. Kethar's fur was standing up, which Elena had learned meant he was very excited or very worried. This is impossible. One of the other Veilnati said, conscious minds cannot contain multiple separate personalities without madness. We have tested thousands of species. Each individual has one consciousness, one voice in their mind. Elena thought about this. But don't you imagine things? Don't you dream or daydream? We do, Kixandra said, but our imaginings are clearly separate from reality. They are pale shadows, not living presences. What Zix describes is different. In your mind, the imagined beings have the same strength and reality as your true self. Zix nodded weakly. I could not tell which thoughts belonged to Elena, and which belonged to the story characters. They were all equally alive, all equally real. It was like trying to have a conversation with 10,000 people all speaking at once. Dr. Kethvar was writing furiously. This explains the telepathic shock. Zix Thera's mind was not prepared to encounter multiple consciousnesses in one body. The overload caused the collapse. Elena sat down heavily in a chair. So, there's something wrong with my mind, with human minds. Not wrong, Dr. Cathar said thoughtfully. Different. Very, very different. Kixandre looked at Elena with new respect. Dr. Vasquez, what you describe is not a flaw. It is perhaps the most remarkable mental ability we have ever encountered. You can create and maintain multiple complete personalities within your consciousness, and you remain sane. This should be impossible. Elena thought about all the books she had read, all the movies that had made her cry or laugh, all the characters who felt like old friends. She had never considered it unusual that these fictional people felt real to her. Is this why the council evaluations have never failed before? Elena asked. Because other species don't think the way humans do. Exactly. Dr. Kethar said, every other species we have encountered has a single linear consciousness. Their thoughts follow predictable patterns. But humans, he paused, looking amazed. Humans carry entire universes in their minds. Zixthera spoke again, voice stronger. Now there is something else. When I was connected to Elena's mind, I felt something that frightened me more than the many voices. What? Kikandra asked. The stories were not just memories. They were active, growing, changing. As I watched, new stories were being born, mixing with old ones, creating new possibilities. It was like watching a star being born, but inside a mind. Elena felt a strange pride at this description. That's just how imagination works, isn't it? You take pieces of different stories and mix them together to create new ideas. The aliens looked at each other with expressions Elena was beginning to recognize as awe and fear. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Qatar said carefully, I think we need to conduct some more tests. What you have described may change everything we know about consciousness itself. Dr. Cathaver worked with Elena for 2 weeks, running test after test. Each experiment revealed something new and impossible about human consciousness. Elena found herself in laboratories filled with strange machines that could measure thoughts and map the patterns of minds. The results are extraordinary, Dr. Kethvar told the assembled council members. Elena sat beside him in the great chamber, watching dozens of alien faces react to his presentation. Human consciousness operates on principles we have never encountered before. The council speaker leaned forward with interest. Explain these principles, Dr. Kethvar. The bear-like scientist activated a holographic display that showed Elena's brain activity. When we scan Dr. Vasquez's mind during normal thinking, we see not one consciousness but hundreds of active thought streams. Each stream corresponds to a different fictional character or story element that she has absorbed throughout her life. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Some aliens flashed colors of confusion, while others made whistling sounds of amazement. These are not mere memories, Dr. Kether continued. They are fully formed personality constructs that can think independently within the human mind. Watch what happens when I ask Dr. Vasquez a simple question. He turned to Elena. What would you do if you were trapped on a desert island? Elena thought for a moment. Well, I would look for fresh water first, like Bear Grylls taught in his survival shows. Then I'd try to build a shelter using techniques I learned from Robinson Crusoe. I might also look for ways to signal for help, like Tom Hanks did in that movie Castaway. The holographic display showed Elena's brain lighting up with dozens of different patterns. Each pattern represented a different source of knowledge, all active at the same time. As you can see, Dr. Cathar explained, she simultaneously accessed the knowledge and personalities of 3 different fictional sources. Her mind treats these fictional characters as real consultants that she can call upon for advice. An alien that looked like a walking crystal spoke up. "This is impossible. Fictional entities cannot provide real knowledge. They are imagination, not reality." Elena stood up. "But they can provide real knowledge. Everything I know about survival comes from stories I've heard or watched. The fictional characters carry the knowledge that their creators put into them. When I think about Bear Grylls, I access everything I learned from his shows. When I think about Robinson Crusoe, I remember all the survival techniques from that story." Dr. Cathar nodded. "Humans appear to learn by creating internal models of people and characters. These models then become permanent residents of their consciousness, available for consultation at any time." Another alien, this one resembling a large insect, clicked its mandibles nervously. "How many of these constructs does a typical human mind contain?" Elena shrugged. "I have no idea. I've never counted them. Thousands, probably. Maybe tens of thousands. Every book I've read, every movie I've watched, every person I've met, they all leave copies of themselves in my head." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Several aliens began communicating rapidly in their own languages. Elena could see fear in many of their expressions. "There is more," Dr. Cathar announced, raising his voice above the noise. "Dr. Vasquez has demonstrated an ability to consciously control these mental constructs." "Show them, Elena." Elena had practiced this over the past few days. She closed her eyes and concentrated. "Right now, I'm thinking like Spock from Star Trek. Logic dictates that your fear of human mental abilities is illogical. We mean you no harm." She opened her eyes and smiled. "Now I'm thinking like Captain Kirk. We come in peace, and we want to work together to explore strange new worlds." The brain scanner showed dramatic changes as Elena shifted between different mental patterns. Each fictional character brought its own way of thinking and speaking. The implications are staggering. Dr. Cathar said, "Humans can adopt the personality, knowledge, and thinking patterns of any character they have encountered. They are natural shapeshifters of consciousness." The council speaker was quiet for a long moment. "Dr. Cathar, what does this mean for telepathic species like the Velnathi?" "That is the most disturbing discovery," Dr. Cathar admitted. "When a telepath attempts to read a human mind, they encounter not one consciousness, but thousands. The telepathic shock can be overwhelming. But we have discovered something even more significant." He activated another holographic display, this one showing Elena's mind interacting with Zixt during their original contact. Humans do not just resist telepathic intrusion, they transform it. When Zixt touched Elena's mind, the human's fictional constructs began feeding false information to the telepath. Zixter experienced memories from fairy tales as if they were Elena's real memories. The telepath could not distinguish between Elena's actual experiences and the experiences of fictional characters. Elena felt a chill as she understood what this meant. "Are you saying that when telepaths try to read human minds, we accidentally lie to them?" "Not lie," Dr. Cathar corrected. "You overwhelm them with information that feels completely real, but comes from fictional sources. A telepath trying to extract the truth from a human mind would encounter thousands of different versions of reality, all equally convincing." The chamber fell silent. Elena could see the aliens processing this information, and many of them looked deeply troubled. An alien that resembled a floating jellyfish spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "If humans can confuse telepaths with fictional realities, what happens when they discover this ability deliberately?" Dr. Cathar's expression grew serious. "We tested this possibility. Elena, would you demonstrate controlled fictional projection?" Elena nodded. Over the past week, she had learned to consciously direct her mental constructs toward telepathic contact. "I'll need a volunteer telepath." Several Vale Nathi had been observing from the audience. One of them, not Zixathra, who was still recovering, stepped forward cautiously. "I will attempt contact," the telepath said, "but I will maintain protective barriers." Elena concentrated, thinking about one specific story. "I'm ready." The Vale Nathi reached out carefully and barely touched Elena's hand. Immediately, the alien's eyes went wide. I see a young woman living in a house with 7 small men who work in a mine. She has skin white as snow and lips red as blood. A wicked queen wants to kill her because a magic mirror says she is the most beautiful in the land." The telepath broke contact, looking confused. "But these are not real memories. This is a fictional story." "Exactly," Elena said. "I was thinking about Snow White. To your telepathic senses, her experiences felt as real as my own memories. The implications hit the chamber like a wave. If humans could feed telepaths fictional information that felt completely real, then telepathic interrogation, mind control, and mental domination, all the tools that many species use to maintain power, would be useless against humans." "There is one final discovery," Dr. Cathvar announced. "Humans can share their fictional constructs with each other." Elena smiled, remembering the tests they had done. "When humans tell each other stories, we're not just sharing information, we're sharing pieces of consciousness. Every time someone tells me a story, I create a mental construct based on that story. And when I tell someone else that story, I pass the construct to them." The council speaker stood up, all 4 arms raised for attention. "Are you saying that human consciousness is infectious?" "In a way, yes," Dr. Cathvar confirmed. "Humans can create shared fictional realities that exist across multiple minds. A group of humans who know the same stories will have similar mental constructs, creating a kind of collective consciousness based on shared narratives." Elena thought about all the movies that millions of people had watched, all the books that had been read by countless readers. "We've been building shared mental universes for thousands of years without realizing it. Every time someone watches Star Wars or reads Harry Potter, they add those characters to their mental collection. Millions of people carry the same fictional beings in their minds." The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens were talking rapidly in dozens of languages. Some were flashing colors of alarm, while others were making sounds of distress. Elena could see that many of them were frightened. The council speaker called for order. "This session is adjourned. The council must discuss these revelations in private." As Elena left the chamber with Dr. Cathvar, she heard fragments of alien conversations. Words like dangerous, unpredictable, and threat reached her ears. "Dr. Cathvar," Elena said quietly, "I think we might have made things worse for humanity." The Oi alien scientist looked at her with his kind eyes. "Perhaps, Dr. Vasquez, but the truth was going to come out eventually. It is better that we discovered it under controlled conditions." Elena wasn't sure she agreed. She had come to Harmony's Edge to help humanity join the galactic community. Instead, she had revealed that humans possessed mental abilities that could potentially neutralize the power of telepathic species. She wondered if the council would decide that humans were too dangerous to be allowed into galactic civilization. As they walked through the corridors of the station, Elena noticed that other aliens moved away from her, keeping their distance. Word was spreading, and not all of it was good. News of Elena's abilities spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, reports were coming in from human colonies and Earth itself. People everywhere were experimenting with their minds, testing the limits of their imagination. Elena received urgent communications from Earth while she waited for the council's decision. The messages painted a picture of a species awakening to powers they never knew they possessed. It started with the writers. Dr. Sarah Chen reported from Earth via holographic communication. When news broke about your discovery, science fiction, authors began testing their mental constructs. They found they could make their fictional characters so vivid that telepathic aliens actually believed these characters were real people. Elena watched the recordings with amazement. Writers were demonstrating their abilities on camera, creating fictional scenarios so detailed that alien observers became confused about what was real. The actors came next, Dr. Chen continued. Theater performers and movie actors discovered they could inhabit their roles so completely that telepathic aliens couldn't tell where the actor ended and the character began. A man playing Hamlet became Hamlet in every telepathic sense. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. The military took notice immediately, Dr. Chen said, her expression growing serious. They've started training units in what they're calling narrative warfare. Soldiers are learning to create shared fictional realities that can confuse enemy telepaths. Elena felt a mix of excitement and worry. How does narrative warfare work? The soldiers studied your brain scans and learned to coordinate their mental constructs, Dr. Chen explained. A squad of 12 soldiers can create a shared story so complex that telepathic enemies become lost in the mental maze. They tested it against some friendly Cathani telepaths. The aliens reported experiencing a battlefield that kept changing with enemies that appeared and disappeared, and objectives that shifted constantly. Elena shook her head in amazement. The soldiers are turning war into a kind of interactive story. Exactly. And the telepaths can't distinguish between the fictional elements and real tactical information. They become so confused by the narrative contradictions that they have to break contact. Dr. Cathar, who had been listening to the reports with Elena, made worried sounds deep in his throat. This will alarm the Council greatly. Many species rely on telepathic advantages and conflicts. More reports came in daily. Human teachers were discovering they could make lessons more effective by creating educational narratives that students could share mentally. Medical professionals found that patients responded better to treatment when doctors used fictional healing scenarios that felt real to telepathic healers. But the most significant development happened on the mining colony of New Tokyo. There was an incident, Dr. Chen reported grimly. A group of human miners encountered a Dominion patrol ship. Elena knew about the Dominion of Silence. They were a hostile empire that used telepathic warfare to conquer other species. Their ships sometimes entered council space illegally, capturing people for slave labor. The Dominion ship tried to use mental domination on the miners. Dr. Chen continued. It's a technique they've used successfully on hundreds of worlds. They project overwhelming telepathic commands that force their victims to surrender. Elena leaned forward. What happened? The miners had been following news about your discoveries. When they felt the telepathic attack beginning, they did what came naturally to humans. They started telling each other stories, shared stories. Stories about brave miners who fought off space pirates and won. The hologram showed security footage from the mining station. Elena watched as 20 human miners stood together, holding hands, while invisible telepathic forces tried to break their minds. Instead of surrendering, the miners began talking rapidly to each other, building a shared narrative about heroic resistance. The Dominion telepaths reported complete failure, Dr. Chen said with satisfaction. Instead of dominating the miners' minds, they encountered a collective fiction about unstoppable heroes. The story was so vivid and convincing that the Dominion forces began to believe it themselves. They retreated in confusion. Elena felt a surge of pride. Humans weren't just defending themselves, they were turning their attackers' weapons against them. But the news wasn't all positive. The Council is in emergency session, Dr. Cathar informed Elena. Many species are demanding immediate action. They see humanity as a threat to the telepathic balance of power that has maintained galactic peace for millennia. Elena spent her days in growing tension. Knowing that her species' future hung in the balance, some council members visited her, asking questions about human abilities and intentions. She tried to convince them that humans wanted only friendship and cooperation. Then Zixt requested a private meeting. The Vale Nathi telepath had recovered from the original incident, but still looked fragile. They met in Elena's quarters with Zixathara maintaining careful distance. Dr. Vasquez, Zixathara said, I need to understand something. When your species shares these fictional constructs, do you lose control of them? Elena thought carefully about the question. What do you mean? When multiple humans create a shared story, does the story begin to exist independently? Can it grow beyond what its creators intended? The question sent a chill down Elena's spine. She had been so focused on the practical applications of human mental abilities that she hadn't considered this possibility. I don't know, Elena admitted. We haven't been doing this long enough to find out. Sixth's black eyes showed deep concern. During our original contact, I experienced something that still troubles me. Within your mind, I encountered fictional beings that seemed to have their own desires and goals separate from your conscious intentions. They were not just memories or tools. They were independent entities living within your consciousness. Elena felt a new kind of fear. Are you saying the characters in my head might be alive? I do not know, Zixter said honestly. But I fear what might happen if millions of humans begin creating shared fictional realities. What if these shared stories become so detailed and widespread that they achieve a kind of independent existence? Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as a voice announced, "All personnel to stations. Unidentified ships approaching." This is not a drill. Elena and Zixter rushed to the observation deck, where they found Dr. Keithvar and other council members watching the approach of a massive fleet. The ships were dark and angular, designed to inspire fear. "Dominion of Silence," Dr. Cathar said grimly. "Their entire Sixth Fleet. They must have learned about the mining incident." Elena counted at least 50 ships, each one larger than Harmony's Edge itself. What do they want? The answer came in the form of a broadcast that filled the station's communication systems. The voice was cold and emotionless, speaking in perfect galactic common language. "Beings of Harmony's Edge, we come to claim the humans. Their mental abilities represent a threat to galactic order. Surrender them immediately or face the consequences." Elena felt her stomach drop. The Dominion wasn't here to negotiate or study human abilities. They were here to capture or destroy humanity's representatives. "The Council must decide," the speaker announced over the intercom. "Do we surrender Dr. Vasquez to preserve peace, or do we risk war to protect a newly discovered species?" Elena looked out at the approaching fleet, each ship bristling with weapons designed to break minds as well as bodies. For the first time since arriving at Harmony's Edge, she wondered if humanity's greatest strength might also be their greatest weakness. "Zixtra," Elena said quietly, "if the Dominion captures me, will they be able to use human mental abilities against other species?" The telepath's expression grew dark. "If they learn to control human consciousness, they could create fictional realities powerful enough to dominate entire worlds. They could turn your greatest gift into the ultimate weapon of conquest." Elena realized that humanity's fate was no longer just about joining the galactic community. It was about preventing their unique abilities from falling into the hands of those who would use them to enslave others. The Dominion fleet continued its approach, and Elena knew that everything was about to change. The council chamber had never seen anything like it. Representatives from hundreds of species argued frantically as the Dominion fleet drew closer. Some demanded that Elena be surrendered immediately to avoid war. Others insisted that humanity's abilities were too dangerous to fall into Dominion hands. Elena stood in the center of it all, knowing that her next words might determine the fate of her entire species. "I have a proposal," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. The chamber fell silent. Even the floating light seemed to dim as every alien focused on her. "The Dominion wants to capture human consciousness abilities for their own use," Elena continued. "But they don't understand what they're trying to steal. Let me show them exactly what human imagination can do when it's used to defend rather than attack." The council speaker's forearms gestured nervously. "Dr. Vasquez, the Dominion fleet contains over 50 ships with planet-killing telepathic weapons. How could you possibly resist such force?" Elena smiled, thinking of all the reports she had received from Earth. "By doing what humans do best, by telling a story so big and so powerful that it becomes real enough to change everything." Dr. Kethvar moved closer, his furs standing up with excitement and fear. "What do you mean? I need to contact Earth immediately," Elena said. "And I need every human in council space to participate in what we're about to do." Within an hour, Elena stood before a hastily assembled communication array that could reach every human colony and Earth itself. The Dominion fleet had stopped just outside weapon range, waiting for the Council's response to their demands. "Citizens of humanity," Elena broadcast. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez speaking from Harmony's Edge. We face a crisis that will determine our future among the stars. I need every one of you to do something that may sound impossible, but I believe it's something only humans can achieve. Across human space, millions of people stopped what they were doing to listen. On Earth, in space stations, on colony worlds, humans gathered around communication devices to hear Elena's words. I need you to imagine with me, Elena continued. Imagine a story so vast and detailed that it becomes a shield around all of humanity. Imagine Earth itself protected by the greatest heroes from every story ever told. Picture Captain Kirk and his crew patrolling our space. See Superman flying between our worlds. Envision Wonder Woman standing guard over our colonies. She paused, feeling the power of collective human imagination beginning to build. But don't just imagine them individually. Imagine them all working together. Every hero from every story, every brave character from every tale, all united to protect humanity from those who would harm us. On the station, telepathic aliens began to react with alarm. The Vale Nathi reported sensing something massive building in the mental space around Earth and the human colonies. Elena continued her broadcast, her voice growing stronger. Think of the Enterprise and the Millennium Falcon flying side by side. Picture Gandalf and Dumbledore casting protective spells around our worlds. See the Justice League and the Avengers working together. Make it real in your minds. Make it so detailed that even you begin to believe it. Across human space, something unprecedented began to happen. Millions of people started adding their own pieces to Elena's narrative. Children contributed their favorite cartoon heroes. Adults added characters from books and movies. Elderly people brought forward heroes from old stories and myths. The collective human imagination began to weave these elements together into a single, massive, shared narrative. On Harmony's edge, alien telepaths were reporting impossible readings. The mental construct that humanity was building together had become so detailed and so widely shared that it was beginning to feel real, even to non-telepathic species. Dr. Vasquez, Sixatha said urgently, "What you are doing, it's working too well. The fictional reality you're creating is becoming so powerful that it might become independent of human control." Elena nodded, having expected this. That's exactly what needs to happen. The Dominion relies on mental domination, but how do you dominate something that exists in the space between reality and fiction? The Dominion fleet had begun moving again, closing in on Harmony's edge. Their telepathic weapons powered up, ready to break the minds of everyone on the station. But as they approached, something impossible appeared between them and their target. The lead Dominion ship suddenly reported contact with what appeared to be a massive space fleet. Ships that looked familiar from human entertainment began materializing around Harmony's edge. The Enterprise, the Millennium Falcon, Star Destroyers, Battle Stars. Dozens of vessels from human fiction appeared to defend the station. Impossible. The Dominion commander broadcast, "These ships do not exist. They are from human entertainment programs." Elena's voice reached across space, carried by the collective power of human imagination. "That's where you're wrong. They exist because we believe in them. They're real because millions of humans have made them real." The Dominion forces tried to push through the fictional fleet, but their telepaths encountered something they had never faced before. Instead of minds to dominate, they found themselves in contact with shared human narratives so complex and detailed that they couldn't distinguish between real and fictional elements. When Dominion telepaths tried to attack Elena's mind directly, they instead encountered Captain Picard's calm wisdom, Yoda's ancient knowledge, and Harry Potter's courage all at once. The fictional characters didn't just resist the mental assault, they transformed it into part of their own stories. "This is Captain Kirk," Elena said, her voice carrying the authority of the fictional character as millions of humans imagined him speaking. "We are Starfleet, and we don't surrender to bullies." The collective human narrative had become so powerful that even Elena was no longer sure where her own consciousness ended and the shared fictional reality began. She found herself thinking with the voices of 1,000 heroes, speaking with their combined wisdom and courage. The Dominion fleet found itself engaged in a battle that followed no rules they understood. Their weapons worked perfectly on the fictional ships, destroying them completely. But every destroyed vessel was immediately replaced by another, as millions of human minds continued feeding the narrative. Worse, the fictional characters began to affect Dominion thinking. Telepaths who tried to penetrate the human defense found themselves accidentally absorbing parts of the stories. Dominion soldiers began questioning their orders, influenced by heroes who always stood up to tyranny. Retreat, the Dominion commander finally ordered. This is not a battle we can win. The humans have weaponized chaos itself. As the Dominion fleet withdrew in confusion, Elena felt the shared human narrative beginning to settle into something more stable. The fictional fleet remained visible to telepathic senses, but it no longer felt like it might spiral out of control. Dr. Vasquez, the council speaker, said in amazement, "How did you know that would work?" Elena smiled, feeling exhausted but triumphant. "Because I finally understood what makes humans special. We don't just imagine things, we make our imagination real enough to touch other minds. We've been doing it for thousands of years through stories, myths, and legends. Today, we just did it on a galactic scale." Zixthera approached carefully, still awed by what had happened. "The collective narrative you created, it's still there. Millions of humans are maintaining it together. You've created a shared consciousness based on fictional heroes." Elena nodded. "And as long as humans continue to believe in heroes and justice and standing up to bullies, that shared consciousness will protect us. We've turned our greatest strength, our ability to make fiction feel real, into our greatest defense." Dr. Keithar was recording everything, his scientific mind racing to understand the implications. "You've changed the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. You've proven that shared belief can create its own reality." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to adapt to a new truth. Humanity was not just another species joining the galactic community. They were a species that could make their dreams and stories real enough to affect the physical world. The Council formally welcomed humanity, but with a new understanding. Humans weren't just citizens of the galaxy, they were its storytellers, its dreamers, and its guardians against those who would use mental power for evil. Elena remained on Harmony's edge as humanity's first ambassador, but she was no longer alone. She carried with her the voices of every hero humanity had ever imagined, and she knew that as long as humans continued to tell stories, those heroes would be there to help. When young aliens asked her how humans had defeated the Dominion, Elena would smile and say, "We told them a story so good they had to believe it. And once they believed it, it became real enough to save us all." The age of telepathic domination was over. The age of narrative reality had begun, and humanity stood at its center, proving that sometimes the greatest power is not the ability to control minds, but the ability to inspire them with dreams worth believing in.